I will now move into brief introductions for each of our panelists. I will ask each panelist as I introduce you, if you can just please turn on your video and wave hello to everyone. And then we will dive into our discussion. So first, I will formally introduce Dr. Amina Abubakar. Dr. Abubakar is a distinguished Kenyan research psychologist. She is professor and director of the Institute for Human Development at Aga Khan University. She's a senior research scientist, and her research areas focus on developmental delays and impairments in children affected by health challenges. Excuse me. And she's also plays an active role in contributing towards developing culturally appropriate strategies to identify and support at-risk children. I don't know if Seth is on yet, but when he joins, Dr. Seth Opong is a professor of psychology at the University of Botswana. He also is very passionate about research around African psychology and decolonizing early childhood science and interventions in Africa, and has recently co-authored a resource on how to strengthen cultural relevance of early childhood development interventions in Africa. Our other next panelist is Margaret Mundia. She's a social worker, passionate about working with her community. She's based in Zambia, and she runs Kaoma Wise Trust, which is a community-based organization that focuses on empowering women, youth, and children to realize their full potential. We have Gideon Kimosop from Kenya, and he has studied developmental studies and social work. He is the program coordinator and CEO for the Nariri Child Development Program, a child-focused organization in northern Kenya. He has previously served as project officer with World Vision Kenya, implementing programs to support the development of children and their families. Next, we have Charles Nyerere. He is an experienced social worker, serving as program officer with Nachikodoa community-based organization in Malawi. He is committed to working in collaboration with diverse people to achieve social change. At Nachikodoa, he coordinates their community-based early childhood development interventions. We have Caroline Nyenye, who is a program officer with Firelight Foundation. In this role, she supports community-based organizations that are grantees of Firelights to sustain community-driven systems change for children and youth in different parts of Eastern and Southern Africa. Finally, our concluding remarks will be offered by our discussant, Manitha, who is Senior Program Officer at the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, and she leads the early childhood development work in Eastern and Southern Africa. I'm sorry for the brief introductions. I know that we have panelist bios that can be shared in more detail for anyone who's interested, but I wanted to make sure that we could dive right into our discussion today. So what we'll do today is we'll start off with a facilitated conversation that I am honored to be facilitating, and I will invite different colleagues to speak to different areas of their expertise. We'll have a couple of rounds of questions moderated by myself, and then we'll actually open it up to all of you. So I will encourage you, as Joy said, to jot down your questions. You can put them in the chat or in the Q&A. We will be following up, and at the end of the facilitated conversation, we will invite audience questions in through the chat. I did want to check in with my colleagues. We do not have Seth yet. I wonder if it's okay then, Amina, for me to start with you. Would that be okay?
That's fine, Sadaf.
Great. So, Professor Abubakar, you've been in the early childhood space, both, within the region and internationally for many years. You've seen a lot of the different approaches to early childhood development, the more traditional approaches, the more community-led approaches, and including indigenous models of work. Can you share a little bit about your observations on the sector and why, in particular, you've been committed to community-driven interventions in most of your career?
Thank you, Sadaf. I think one key observation is that since I've moved into the field of early childhood, there's been really a lot of positive movement. So if you think back to the early 2000s, a lot of focus was on survival, but now people have focused on thriving. And I think this, let's first start by acknowledging such an important move that allows a lot more investment and a lot more research and programming and interventions in the community to try and ensure high quality research. Now, the problem comes is when we have, top-down kind of models, which are being imported from other settings, and sometimes don't really consider the unique circumstances and unique, conditions people live in. So, if you look at what the evidence shows, is that when we use really more contextually relevant approaches, when we are able to engage communities more, so that we have work that is community-led, but also sometimes really work that is community-owned, you're likely to have more impact, but not just short-term impact, but lasting impact. Because then, even when, project ends or a program ends, the community can continue implementing and can carry it forward. So really the commitment comes from, one, just the respect for the community, for the right to determine some of the things that's happening in their community, but also just for sustainability and ensuring that what we do is not only impactful in the long term, but is sustainable.
Thanks, Amina, for helping us set the stage a little bit. I'll turn now to Caroline and just to ask each panelist, if possible, thank you for turning on your video. Amina set the stage for, the importance of community-led action, but I wanted to get your support in helping us unpack what this looks like in practice. So would you mind sharing with us from your perspective, what is community engagement, what is community-driven action, and what's the difference between the two? And also, I know later in the conversation, many of our panelists are going to refer to community-driven systems change. So if it's okay, if you could set a definition for us so that we're all working with the same understanding of the words we're using today. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Sadaf, and thank you, colleagues, for joining us as we unpack this conversation today. So the way I look at community engagement and community-driven action is that when you are talking about engaging the community, it's working with the community at the level where you just work with them collaboratively to address the issues that affect them. So you come in and you have found a solution going on, you bring in the solution and you work together to say, can we work together to address this solution? So you are collaboratively working with the community to address those issues. On the other hand, the way I look at community-driven action is going deeper than that. It is allowing yourself to trust the community to the point of putting your investments in them, trusting them to identify and prioritize the issues that affect them, but also trusting them with the responsibility of decision-making in terms of the possible solutions that would be implemented to address the issues that are affecting them. So in a sense, when you're talking about community-driven actions, you are transferring self-agency to the community. The community identifies the issues, identifies the solutions, are in charge of the investment, are in charge of the decision they are making as solutions to the issues they're affecting in the community. I will now talk about what we look at community-driven systems change to look like. We are in the process of working using this approach in our initiatives in Firelight at the moment, and we are using this with the different initiatives. So the way we look at community-driven systems change approach is that we are using this as an approach that that is used to develop and bring out the voice of the communities in the work that we do. So it is an approach to development where the social transformation is shifted to the community, the insights, the leadership, the ownership is shifted to the people who are living the experience of the issues that you're trying to address, but also that are living within that community where the interventions are going to happen. So you are giving the community to create that lasting change within the systems that affect that particular issue that you're working in the community. After identifying the root causes and the solutions, and they work together with the stakeholders in their community level. In this case, if it is early childhood, working together in leading the process, driving the process of identifying the solutions and connecting the different stakeholders who will come in to work with them to address the issues affecting children in their community. Thank you, Sadaf.
Thank you, Caroline. So I'll now move into, questions to some of our community-based experts. And so for the community-based experts, I want to ask a little bit more about how you actually do include community members in the different stages of your early childhood development work, whether it is in the identification of issues, in the development of interventions, or even in the implementation and monitoring of those interventions. So Charles, I'd love to start with you first. Charles, can you tell us, from your experience, how this approach has been different for you, what it has looked like compared to the more traditional outside-in or top-down approach to early childhood development? And maybe you can give us examples of what it has looked like, in particular, to identify issues and design interventions in collaboration with your community.
All right, thank you so much, Asada, for this opportunity to us to share our experiences in ECD interventions. So basically, the community-based system approach, it has really empowered us as a grassroots organization to take charge of interventions and also maximizing on our input of the members. So the value of this approach is that it has entrusted the CBOs at the grassroots level to take charge of interventions. Like in our case, when we were starting at Nachikodoa, what we did in the first step was to identify key stakeholders in our working areas. These are the ECD working areas. These stakeholders include the government stakeholders, the community structures, and other key stakeholders in our catchment area. Then we went ahead to have a community dialogue, the discussions now to say, what are the issues that are affecting our community? What are these issues all about? What should we do? And we went deep as finding the root causes of this problem so that maybe we should not only treat the signs and symptoms, but should have the deep understanding of the problem, and then we're able to provide new solutions. So from there, now we're able to prioritize these issues, to say these issues are so many. We have so many issues. How can we curtail these issues so that we have practical issues which we can deal with, we can find solutions to. Now, from there, now that's where we go to the point of saying, okay, we have prioritized the issues. Now, can we work together with the government stakeholders or the key stakeholders to now develop an action plan, which is informed by all the stakeholders in our catchment area. Now, you can see that for these steps, the implementation action plan, which came out from our disposal, was actually informed by all the key stakeholders in our catchment area. We're talking about the government, the local structures, and also us. So by the end of the day, we're able to provide an action plan which is implementable, and also each and every stakeholder has a lot to play in this developmental action. So for us to say community system change, it values the inputs of key stakeholders and also members of the community to drive the solutions to make a sustainable change in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I know that it was really hard to capture so much rich work that your community has done in just a moment or two. So thank you for summarizing, and I know people will be eager to learn more. I'll turn now to Gideon. Gideon, I know that your organization has a very robust method for engaging parents and even children themselves when it comes to initiatives for young children. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, about how you've involved the community, how you've engaged parents and children themselves? Gideon, if you can try coming off mute, and if technology allows you to turn on your video as well.
Yes, my video is not working well.
No problem.
So please accept me to proceed. Yeah, thank you. So from our end, we work with families through organizations that every family that is under our sponsorship program come together to form what we call Parents General Assembly. And this group of parents elect themselves, within themselves, they get their own leadership. And these leadership are the same people that we will sit every year to conduct a needs assessment. This kind of needs assessment will inform us on what to implement that year. The other thing we do is our leadership is all community led, because we report to a board. This board checks on what we do. They conduct monitoring together with part of our staff, and every other initiative, even up to the reporting period. The other step where we involve them is especially the children. We have life stages that seek to address issues directly based on the age of the child. And in this case, I'll look at the ECD age, that is between 0 and 5 years. What we do,
Gideon, it seems like you've gone on mute. Gideon, I think we can't hear. Oh, you're back. Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sadaf?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Gideon?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, now finally I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry for that itch.
No problem.
So these children, normally we focus our activities in the ECD center. Like we do school feeding programs, we empower the caregivers and also conduct monitoring and health and nutrition screening every month. Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon. The parent assembly sounds like a very useful approach for input and governance. So thank you for sharing that. Margaret, I'll turn to you now. Kaoma Wise Trust has been giving a lot of attention to working with community and government stakeholders at each stage. Can you give us some examples of how community and government stakeholders have been involved in decision-making in the early childhood programs implementation? Margaret, you're on mute. Please come off mute. Thank you.
Sadaf. Kaoma Wise Trust is an organization which is focusing on empowering women, youths, and children. Kaoma Wise Trust has been implementing a project called Early Child Development. And the Kaoma Wise Trust has been sensitizing the community on the importance of early child development and how we have worked with the community and government stakeholders. What we did, we started with paying a cater score to the district commissioner's office to tell what the projects that we are going to implement in the district. Thereafter, we went to the traditional chief leaders to tell them also about what we are going to do in their communities. Thereafter, we had a district community stakeholders with all government stakeholders, including church leaders and the people with disabilities. After having a stakeholders meeting, now we went into the community to start implementing with the communities. But before starting having meetings with the communities, we have also a sensation meeting with the communities, whereby the communities came up with their issues affecting them, root causes, and also solutions. And now when we started, we had a plan because the communities had a plan of building ECE center. So when we started that plan of building a ECE center, the chief gave us land, gave it land to the organization and the community to build the ECE center. After being given the land, the Ministry of Education also came in to give technical advice. And then after, when we started to implement, the communities provided sand, stones, curing of blocks, and digging the foundation. So instead of paying the money for buying sand and stones, and also for curing and digging the foundation, we saved some resources. And instead of building 1x2 classroom for ECE center, we came up with the 1x3 classroom for ECE center. After building the school, the ECE center, the same communities went to the forest to cut poles, and they bring the poles where we have built together with them an outdoor area play park. Then from there, the same communities went to the Ministry of Education to submit a letter of request. They wanted a qualified staff teacher for ECE learners, and they were given that teacher. So this is what we have done. Then from there, The community themselves, from some other schools, they have also coped the same way. They have contributed sand, stones, and other things so that they can also start communicating, implementing the same project that we have done to the school. Then we have already received more letters from other communities, neighboring communities, who have done the same, who want to have the EC centers. They have cut poles and they are coming for technical support to Kauma Wise Trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. I think the description that you have shared has really emphasized how the ownership from the community really transforms the way they are engaged. My next set of questions was actually going to be around some of the changes you have seen in the community. And I don't know if you want to add anything more, because I know you've already shared some of these changes that you've seen in how community ownership and community action has been really transformative. Is there anything further you would want to say about the changes you're seeing in how the community is involved and how communities and government are working together? Any other comments you want to share?
Yes, a lot has been changing the way communities working. They are taking ownership of the initiative, unlike in the past where they were just being told what to do. Communities are more aware of their rights now. They are thinking on their own. More parents are taking responsibilities of taking their children to ECE centers. And the parents and the community members are now, and government stakeholders are now speaking to each other. They can go direct without boundaries. The community, they go to the government offices to request whatever they want to talk. From there again, the same communities, they do request, as I said, that they requested a teacher from the Ministry of Education, of which they were given. Government stakeholders in Department of Education are now using the same system, community-driven system change. They are not imposing, they have to agree with the community how they want to work or when they are going to have a meeting with them. They are no longer imposing. That one, it is finished. Communities are now demonstrating, starting ownership by taking initiative in their own hands. Then from there, Kalukundwe community, just a neighbor from the school that the ECE center we built. They have also cut the poles for construction an outdoor play area, which they have already done this time. From there again, they collected sand, stones, and gravel. Why they want also to build the ECE center. Then from there, they have also mobilized local materials such as stone, sand, and government and gravel for potential construction of ECE center. So we have seen that community-driven system change. It is a system that makes the projects to be sustainable.
Thank you, Margaret. These are really wonderful examples of the ownership, the drive, and the sustainability. Thank you for sharing, Margaret. I'll turn now to Gideon. Gideon, you've also seen some important changes in communities and in children themselves as a result of the intentional work you've been doing to include parents, children, and communities in decision-making. Can you describe some of the changes that you have seen? Gideon, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sure. Now, Sadaf, let me dwell on issues about empowered children. Once we build the capacity of these children from the age of 0 to 5, 6 to 15, by the time they become the youth, they are actively engaged in their decision-making in their communities. And a case in question here is we have a youth assembly that sits with in the county assembly and airs issues relating to the youth. They have been able to challenge us, challenge the local leadership, so that they are able to have the issues incorporated in the decision-making table. So it's no longer issues about adults making decisions for children as it used to be. The other thing is we've had a community-based child protection policy that has been developed from the lowest level of the village level. The participation of the people, the children, and every other person, the people living with disability, has really shown that when the people have knowledge, they are empowered, they are able to speak for themselves. And that one is something I can say it is really encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon. That's really powerful. You know, there's so much a push in the sector for having children's voices involved, children's perspectives influencing the programs and activities that are intended to support them. And this is a wonderful example of how you have built it from the earliest stages, so that by the time they are youth, they are already fully committed and confident in their own lives and in their own rights. Thank you for sharing that. Charles, I'll turn back to you. Nashikodowa has also fostered really strong ownership from the community in the area of child protection and safeguarding, as well as early childhood development more generally. Can you also share some of the changes that you have seen in how communities and government are taking ownership, how they're working together with one another on ECD interventions and in other ways, compared to how it used to be in the past when you took a more traditional approach?
Okay, thank you so much, Sadaf. So I'll start by saying, in the past, as in our catchment area, the traditional approach used to provide solutions, external solutions, was more like being imposed on us. Like the drivers of these solutions were like the donors giving us direction, and also giving us external solutions. Say, okay, get this, use this in a catchment area. But this has always been the problem, because what we see is that these solutions, most of the times, they don't fit within our communities. Now, us, after engaging the community at Achikodowa CBO, what we are seeing now is that members are now trying to recognize their needs, their strength, and also areas that needs capacity in such a way that they're able to work around using their local knowledge to provide solutions to the problem that they have. So we are seeing changes in that, like in Achikodowa catchment area. After engaging the community, the community was able to realize the need to have a learning environment which is conducive for children. And the communities came together to work around on cultivating land, sand, labor, just to make sure that there is a conducive environment for children. And now what they did was to construct 2 ECD centers just to curtail the need for the conducive environment for children. Another thing which I want to add is that most of the times we have seen that the decision-making power most of the time has been influenced by the donors outside. So what happens is that most of the times when the donors take charge of such interventions, they normally give you the funding, they give you the problems now to solve, and even the how far to solve the problem. Now, if I ask you a question, can this be sustained? Never, because the law of the community is also seen in that intervention. But what we are seeing at Nachikodowa is that the community is now realizing the need to use what is available in the community, recognizing each input as important, and also each and every stakeholder having a role to play in making development sustainable. What I also do to make it clear is that this approach is trying to put the community on the driver's seat. When someone owns a problem, if you shift the blame to that person, he will be able to make a change because he knows that he owns the problem. So if you shift the power back to the owners of problems, what they do is they'll be able to drive the change and also propose solutions which are going to solve the problems once and for all. Another thing which I want to add is about the connection. In the past, at our catchment area, what happened was that most of the times the community not only understood that the intervention should only target a child, but they didn't understand the connection that the child lives in an environment which needs to be looked after. So what we are seeing now is that people are now understanding the connection that wherever there is a child in terms of ECD, it can be at home, in the family, and also at the health facility, even at the community at large. This process needs to be secure, and also children needs to be safe. So what they're doing right now is that they're able to form child protection committees using this community-driven system approach. They're able to own and champion a community child protection safeguarding methods, whereby in each and every village there is a volunteer, a child protection volunteer, and also there is a system put in place just make sure that any case being reported is followed up. Any case which has been brought to book has been identified. There is actually a referral process. This referral process is including the police forum, the CBO, even the magistrate court, and also the social welfare office. So what we are seeing now is that if you empower the community, what happens is that they own the process. They can even champion a system in a local way that you cannot believe it. It can be sustained. It cannot require for you to be checking it here and there, because in an environment where there are children, there are so many things which are on the child. And if you make the environment safe and secure using the community methods or approaches, what you're building is a long-term solution to ensure that children are safe and also they're able to survive and thrive into a productive beings in the catchment area. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I think you've given some really powerful examples of how, by working with the community-led approach and also working with existing systems and strengthening them, really sets the foundation for a long-term shift in the environment and the experiences that children will have in the long term. Thank you. It seems like we temporarily had Dr. Opong in our group, and then I think we lost him again. I think he has connection challenges. Maybe if it's okay, Professor Abubakar, if I can actually turn back to you for any additional insights that you'd want to share now at this point, having heard from our community-based experts. What are some of the reflections that you share, and even some of the your reflections that you've shared with me personally before around the risks and benefits of top-down traditional approaches compared to community-driven and indigenous approaches?
Thanks, Sadaf. Maybe I'll just first comment on what our colleagues have shared. So very few times do we get an opportunity to really have a dialogue that involves, people from the community and those from academia. And I think sometimes we lose a lot of, we lack the opportunity to really look at some of the innovations and some of the things people are doing in the communities that work. So first, I would like to thank the panelists who have really brought to us some of what is working in their communities and how they're doing it. So I think I have not much to reflect or to add on that. I think the core message is that there are different ways in which we need to engage the community, not just by having them either at the start or end of the project, but really making them the key partner in designing, implementing, evaluating, and taking forward whatever pieces of work we would like to do. And from what has been said today, then really there is, a lot of interest in participation in the community. It's just how we are able to tap onto this interest and work closely with community members as equal partners.
Thank you, Amina. I do see that we have Dr. Opong back. Do we actually? We may have lost him again. I know that there's been connection challenges. It seems like we have lost him again, but that's okay. We are happy to turn to our next. I wanted to turn to you, Caroline. As you and I both have been at Firelight, Firelight has been supporting community-driven systems change for children and youth for some years now. And I know that you have played an active role in, thinking about what it means as a funder to support community-based organizations in this process. What is the advice that you would share with others, whether they are funders or NGOs, consultants, practitioners, around some of the learnings that you have gathered over this time in terms of supporting community-led change for early childhood development?
Thank you, Sadaf. So the first one I would say is we need to invest in community self-identified needs and solutions, because the community-based, what their needs for their children are, we need to put them in the driver's seat as we have been talking. So what that has looked like for us is investing in time and resources for communities to self-identify the issues, to prioritize the root causes that is causing the challenges facing the children, identifying the solutions, and working together with the stakeholders and the communities to map out the action plan that will take them in the journey towards reaching that community vision for the change they want to see for their children. So my number one point is invest in community self-identified needs and solutions. It has to be identified by the communities. The second point I would say is about trusting and leveraging on pre-existing community capacity and indigenous knowledge. Most of the times when we go to intervene for early childhood development, we go with ideas that are coming from outside. And more often than not, we don't take advantage of what already exists in the community. Caregivers have been taking care of their children before we came in, since we were born, all this time. So how do we tap on what already exists and in the indigenous knowledge and practices that have actually been helping the community members in providing nurturing care for children? So tap on that as we bring in these interventions to strengthen that, but not to assume that there's nothing already exists in the community. The third point I would talk about is the need to contextualize the Global North early childhood development concepts and approaches so that we contextualize it to fit the local context where we are working in. And what this looks like is that we go in with these topics, but don't implement it as a copy-paste. Check what works in that context. What is the pre-existing knowledge, the traditions, the knowledge in that community, and how do we contextualize that? Because it will only make sense to the community and the caregivers if they can relate to the content that you're bringing in. And also, let's aim for genuine trust-based partnerships. And what this looks like is to co-create together, co-create with the community members, co-create with the community agents. Let's work towards two-way accountability. Let's be open and allow ourselves to fail forward together with our communities. Let's learn together as we adapt in the solutions that we implement. The last thing, so that I can let the next speaker come in, is to be patient in the work that we do. Let's allow for time for community members to implement, to try, to adapt, to learn. And because we know that it takes time to build collaborative partnerships between different actors when intervening with children. And in an approach where we are looking for systems change, where we are bringing everyone along, the different stakeholders, let's work towards creating time for bringing all these actors together and allow ourselves room to learn and adapt as we get along. Thank you, Sadaf.
Thank you, Caroline. And I think some of the points you made around trust and patience, they're a lot harder than they sound. And I would encourage attendees, if you want to engage further, to reach out to Caroline or to comment in the chat. It is now my honor to invite our discussant, Manisa, to share some of your thoughts. You've been wonderfully listening to our brilliant panelists, and we'd love for you to share some of your thoughts that will help us then lead into a more open discussion with the attendees.
Thank you so much, Sadaf. Let me just make sure, oh, you probably can't see me. I put my camera down. You can hear and see me, I hope. Great. Yes. Well, I don't know how other participants feel, but I just think the panelists have brilliantly summed up what's needed in order to have more community leadership of early childhood programs. So I'm not going to repeat what they've said, but instead maybe speak from a funder's perspective and speak a bit more broadly about how I see this conversation fitting within much wider discussions that are happening around development and around aid and around support to early childhood work. In fact, support even beyond early childhood. And I think one of the big movements we have maybe all seen and been aware of and been part of is this movement against, well, for the decolonization of aid. And for me, at the heart of that is this idea, this big shift we have to make in development between us with our nice bowed up ideas of how we think things should be, to what we've heard coming out consistently from our panelists on we're the facilitators of what the community wants to do. And there were a few things that came out that really made me think of some things. First of all, when Amina was speaking about something essentially I call stewardship as well, this sustainability point. So this idea that if we're supporting communities, we want to come in and support in a way that leaves things better, not creating things that then leave communities high and dry and really difficult for them to continue on doing what they want to do. So this issue of sustainability means that we have no choice but to go the way of our communities driving the approaches they want as well. I really liked hearing from something Gideon said. You know, how many times, and I've done it as an implementer, let me be honest, and I've accepted it as a donor. When you have your plan, you go to the community and you report back and you say, we did dissemination, we did sensitization. What is that? What you did is you went and you told everyone what you're going to do anyway. And who in the community is going to say no necessarily, because where have you created the space for the dissent, for the alternative suggestion, for coming in to do support for institutional strengthening for communities to do that. So it's not even that they're working through any intermediaries, but they are actually directly implementing what it is that they decide they want to do. I really liked some of the issues coming out. I think Margaret also pointed to this in her examples. She was really talking about, you start from a concept and a mindset of what are the community assets. Let me not come with this deficit model. Oh, they must need this. We must tell them about parenting. No. What are the actual community assets that we are coming in to strengthen, support, and to build upon? Yeah, there's gaps everywhere. If you want to come to my house, you're going to see gaps, loads of gaps in my parenting. But if you came in my house and start to tell me, oh, do this, do that, I'll be very upset. I want you to first understand what I'm doing, where I'm seeing some issues and problems, and then you're working with me to implement the solutions that are for my children, not yours. So I just really think this same kind of mindset has to be applied. And then I just end with, it's not just it's also us, as I think about this all the time, us as the Hilton Foundation, as a funder, we are not there yet. There are 3 big shifts we need from ourselves within. The first is, are we really properly flexible and adaptable? I have my strategy. I've reported it to the board. I've got a whole load of indicators I need to deliver on. So how far can I actually be flexible if we come to a community and say, oh, we want to do this parenting thing, and the community says, oh, we've got that sorted, we just need a borehole. Like, how ready am I to go, okay, let's go borehole, you know? So how flexible and adaptable are we? How prepared are we to cede power? We think we know it all, but we don't. How much are we open to say, okay, tell us, what is it that we should be doing? Genuine blank sheet of paper, guide us. I don't know how that is. And there's a last thing, Caroline, if you listen to her interventions, every single one, she came back to trust. Is there mutual trust? The community trusting us and us trusting the community? I don't think there is always. And I think these are things that we as foundations and funders also want to think about. So thank you so much for all you shared. Thank you so much to AKU and Firelight AKU IHD and Firelight for putting this together to allow us this chance to speak. And thank you for giving me a few moments. Back to you, Sada.
Thank you so much, Maniva. I really appreciate how you brought the question of power to the center of the conversation. And it's something that we kind of tiptoe around, but it actually comes down to that. Are we willing to trust the community with the power to make those decisions? With that, I'd love to open it up to questions that are coming in on the chat. I know we have a couple in the Q&A, we have a couple in the chat, and we have a few that came in earlier at registration time. I'm going to read the first one out, and if any of my panelists want to dive in, any of our panelists want to dive in, I'd love to hear that. So this question is, I'm from one of our attendees right now. I'm interested in hearing if and how any of the examples challenge the typical approaches or practices linked to ECD theory and practice. For instance, were there any community-driven approaches or ideas which are based in Indigenous understandings and approaches to childhood? Would any of the panelists like to jump in on that question? Caroline, please do.
Yeah, I can take it. I was hoping our colleagues from the community would say this so that I don't, but let me go. So I'll just share from the experience that we have done by saying that we have deliberately, by going in, been conscious about the pre-existing community knowledge, traditions, and norms about taking care of children. And what we have done is at the point when we are onboarding our partner members into the initiative, we have a discussion, first of all, about what already exists in the community. How have we traditionally taken care of children? How have we as parents, as grandparents, how has the community generally taken care of children? And of course, making sure you're talking about practices that are not harmful to the children, that are not harmful to the mother. And we have leveraged that in building that into the implementation. Our grantee partners, when they go into the communities to surface the root causes, the issues identifying the children, some of them, when they are speaking to the community members, they are speaking to the elderly members of the community, the parents of the community, harnessing that knowledge that already exists, the norms and the practices. And when we come now to capacity building, we are leveraging on that just to strengthen on that. And so that the global knowledge, the understanding of early childhood development from the global knowledge is really strengthening that which already exists. And by bringing in the caregivers, the parents together along in the journey to strengthen this. And we have seen some of our partners who have gone to the extent of bringing in elderly parents from the community members, where they come to the children, to play with the children in the early childhood education centers, singing songs with them, playing with them, telling them stories from the traditional way of telling stories in the African way. And this has really strengthened in the process of not only just playing with the children, but also passing on this valuable traditional knowledge from the elders in the community. Thank you, Sadaf.
Sadaf, can I add something? I think for me, it's not always about something challenging what is existing, but also something adding to what is existing. So we might actually go in and find that what is there already works, but there may be some new insights in how people are coping with how they are bringing up their children. And I think just the fact that we can work with the communities to get this indigenous knowledge and add into the literature, it's so important. Now, there's some work we are currently doing with pastoralist communities, and we're talking to them about paternal engagement. And they say sometimes fathers have to go away even for a year because of moving with pasture, and especially with the challenges of climate change. You know, just being able to understand how our communities having to deal with challenges of, these new challenges, and some of them actually old, because these communities tell us they have dealt with very high temperatures and desert life for quite a while. This is not in the literature, honestly. I'm adding it, so just to add to the point that, yes, there are things like shared distributed caregiving, which is something that is usually not in the mainstream literature so much, because we really focus on the mother as the caregiver. That is something that you find very different. But I think also by just working in these communities, there's just so much knowledge about how people have been coping with what others see as new challenges, but issues they've addressed for many years. But also because quite a number of the info we get sometimes don't come from communities like nomadic communities, pastoralist communities. There's just not much in the literature. So I think some of our approaches are really going to add some new insights into how communities that have traditionally not contributed to the literature do organize childcare. Thank you, Sadaf. Sorry to have jumped in.
No, thank you so much. And I think you added in some really helpful perspectives about how we need to really broaden the knowledge base and understanding we have around how child development happens, around how parenting happens. Even as we think about supporting Indigenous models, we need to have we need to widen and nuance that understanding of child rearing. Another question that we have here in the chat is, sorry, I'm just looking through here. One question around the how to support community-based or community-led interventions in times of crisis or disaster. I know that all of the ideas, all of the experiences we've shared today and the results we've shared today have not tended to be in times of crisis or disaster, but I do know that some of our colleagues have experience in this area. Would anyone like to share thoughts on, how do you keep this community-driven approach or community-owned or community engaged approach when there's a disaster situation?
I think I can come in.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Malawi is one of the countries that have been hit by the Cyclone Freddy recent months. When we were working around the community living system change in terms of ACD, what we did was that we were trying to understand now the situation, right? Because what happens when you're using community living system approach, it's not necessarily that you are fixed to what you're supposed to do from start. You can also try to be flexible enough just to respond to the issues which are coming in. So when Second Friday hit us, we're able to stop our interventions and to say what has now been the really challenges which have been being like huge for us to work around. So, catchment day, what happened was like we had issues of roofs blown up from the ECD centers. So we're able to now to start prioritizing those issues to say, what should we do? And in terms of this, we're able to mobilize resources, just make sure that we're able to curtail the response, the disaster response, just make sure that our children are accessing learning shelters or ECD centers, which are conducive. So we're able to mobilize resources to respond to the disaster. And also at times like this one, we're able to now to provide some psychosocial support to the parents who were really hit hard. Affected in terms of this Cyclone Freddy. So we conducted mobile visitation, home visits. We had our home visitors, their supervisors. They're able to move from door to door, provide some social support. Those who were really affected with the cyclone, just to make sure that we're able to be on the same page. So in a nutshell, you can say the community system approach is flexible. It can change. It doesn't have a fixed framework. For us, what is important is what is the pertinent issue which is coming in? How can you respond to it? And how can you engage the community? And which other stakeholders can come in to provide a support to that kind of a need at the kind of time of a crisis? I think I can stop from there. Maybe my colleague can also come in.
Charles, maybe just if I can, what I'm hearing from you, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, is that because the community was already involved in owning and driving the process, that when a crisis situation hit, the community was able to take ownership in adapting and changing the plans. Is that what it is, or have I misunderstood?
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that because it's the same community which you have been engaging over and over again, and let's say you have interventions which are looking at something else outside the disaster. When disaster strikes, you can be able to pause and say, what should we do now at this time? Maybe you can try to look for other things to say, now we have been hit by disaster. What's the pertinent issue now? Maybe an ECD center has been destroyed. So what can be our way forward? Now, the committee cannot propose the way forward, like solution to say, okay, at this time, maybe we don't have a structure for now. Let's engage traditional leaders or religious leaders to provide us a room, maybe a church, temporary church, for us to accommodate our children. So you're able to respond to the needs depending on what's the need and how are other stakeholders coming in to respond to that need. So it's a matter of continuous engagement and coming together and say what's burning for now and how can we change the approach to say to fit in what is burning for now.
Thank you, Charles. That's very insightful. Amina, I'll turn to you.
So one very quick comment. I think the beauty of community-led, community-owned interventions and movements is that we create resilient communities. You know, in terms of conflict, in terms of disaster, emergency, these community resources can be quickly mobilized. I'm looking at some of the data we had during COVID. And, you know, parents were expected to be the one training children and continuing with education. But in low income settings, what really would have worked are community centers and community resources, because parents didn't have sufficient resources, parents didn't have sufficient training and preparation to really support their children's education. So I think what I wanted to emphasize is really an approach, a community-based approach, a community-led approach builds resilient communities that can then address any emergency setting and really kind of handle issues as they come in. So really it ties out to what Charles is saying, just emphasizing that.
Thank you. I think that takeaway point is actually very strong. What I'll do actually before I turn to the next question in the chat is, because I know that we've had trouble with Professor Opong's connectivity and he's here with us now. I know, Seth, you haven't, unfortunately, because of connection challenges, you didn't get to hear many of the panelists. But I do know that we were really hoping to hear from you around some of the research work that you've done and your broader reflections on the sector in terms of, you know, why you have come out so committed to community-led interventions for early childhood development. So Professor Opong, if your connection is clear, I'd love for you to come in and share a little bit of your thoughts.
Thank you, Sadaf. I hope I am clear enough, and I apologize. I'm in the field collecting data, so yeah. With respect to community-driven, community-led interventions in ECD, I do hold a strong conviction that when communities are empowered to solve their problems, they become resilient, even in crisis, and they're able to deal with issues that they are faced with. So my interest in this area of research is to provide the necessary evidence to support and advocate for community-led interventions. But if you look at the landscape of ECD interventions, many of them are just top-down. We haven't had enough of bottom-up approaches, which involves community being in the driving seat, deciding for themselves what they want to do and how they want to do that. So that is an issue that we kind of have to address, because when the interventions are top-down, they tend to cause disruptions in community, and there is no way or usually nothing has been done to
I'm not hearing you, Seth. Seth, I think we've lost you. Oh, there. Seth, we lost you for a minute.
Am I audible?
You are now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was just saying that when some organizations like UNICEF, Lego Foundation, and the others, which we know they mostly do that, tend to have the top-down approach. Some of these interventions tend to cause disruptions in the communities, and there haven't been any attempt to envisage how to mend the chaos that result from such interventions. And so if we want the community to continue to thrive and only assist them to do what they want to do, then our research and the intervention should be facilitative and not to be the ones to decide for the communities as to what to do and all of that. Yes.
I seem to have lost your audio again. Seth, I think we've lost your audio. Seth, we can't hear you. I'm just going to summarize a little bit of what I think I heard you say, and then hopefully if you can come back in, you can resume or you can add it to the chat. I think what I heard Seth say was about how there is increasing research that is growing, but also more research needed around community-led approaches compared to the top-down approaches. But the other interesting point I heard him say is that we don't actually often document or quantify or research the harmful effects of some of the outside-in interventions. And I think the word used was the chaos sometimes that is caused in the community, or the disruption that's caused in the community as a result of some of those outside-in approaches, which I think is a really important consideration. We've been talking a lot about the advantages and the benefits of community-led approaches, but I thank you, Seth, for bringing in the additional lens around some of the harms or the disruptions that can come in from outside-in approaches that don't fully partner with the community. Seth, we lost you again. I didn't know if I was trying to summarize what I heard you say. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add. All right, I will actually turn back to the chat because we have some really interesting questions and I want to keep us moving in the interest of time. There's a question from Masad in the chat saying, great presentations. Any key challenges experienced while operationalizing community-driven or community-led ECD initiatives? And what are some of the mitigation approaches used? So any panelists want to share some of the challenges you've experienced in operationalizing a community-led approach and how you have addressed it? I see Caroline ready. Go ahead, Caroline.
Thank you, Sadaf, and thank you so much, Masad, for that question. Indeed, the community-driven systems change approach is not short of challenges and problems. And I'll just share some of the challenges that we have experienced while we have operationalized this. The one thing that is that has come out in the clusters that we have worked with is the messiness of the process. It is a messy process because in the process of accommodating voices from different members, different sectors of the community, you are allowing different ideas coming up for the solutions as well. And in the process of implementation, there's room for pausing, adapting, and learning. So there's no linear way of moving towards the vision that the community has identified, and it requires for collective learning and adapting as you move on, as I've been saying. It is also a messy process in the sense that you can't like put this in a log frame, because, for example, when each grantee partner works with their community and surfaces their different issues and indicators, you don't have a uniform way in which you're going to track the progress and the changes that are being made, except having that power line with that CBO to be able to track and the changes and the adaptations they are making with the specific communities and on the specific issues they are addressing for the children in those communities. The other challenge that has been also is around community expectations. When we go to communities and surface root causes of challenges affecting children, we are going to come up with so many issues that are affecting children in the community. And when you do not have enough resources to, as is often the case, to respond to these cases, then it poses a challenge. So the way we have tried to, the way our partners have worked with the communities to do that is, first of all, doing the stakeholder mapping process upfront. And in that process of prioritizing the issues, then the community and all the stakeholders at that level are involved in the process. In terms of bringing every stakeholder involved, representatives, to prioritize the issues that then you can intervene within the resources that are available. It also helps to be transparent about the resources, the time available for the initiative, so that when the community members are prioritizing this, they are guided within a certain parameters. They know these are the resources available, this is the time available to do this, and that helps to put all the stakeholders on the same page. I would let other colleagues share if they have.
Let me come in.
Thank you, Caroline. Sure, please do, Charles.
Yeah, so I think the first challenge which I've noted is that there is resistance from the community because in the same community where we work with, there are also other NGOs or other organizations who are using other approaches to implement the intervention. So there's more like a confusion among the beneficiaries. So they meet us, they say using community system change. They meet other stakeholders, other NGOs, they're using another approach. So there's more mix up and also confusion. So they kind of result into resistance. They say, because people opt to go to where there is more of like benefiting more, where and not where there is less of commitment than it is. So that's kind of amazing in terms of there's confusion among the community members because so many approaches are coming in the community, and people are now like confused which one is best, which one is And also I want to make it clear that for this approach, the change takes time to be seen, and most of the times our communities don't have that time. They feel like they're expecting something at a quicker point, but for this approach it needs time. So the more we try to put it into practice, people would expect results instantly, but for this approach it really needs time for us to recognize change and for you to convince people to be engaged and also to be mobilized, identify issues, prioritize issues, and then come up with an action plan, then start implementing. It takes time. So people need to take time to understand that it's a process which needs a lot of time to be implemented. And also another thing which I want to add in is that I think I've missed my point. Okay, so issues do with now when you engage the community, most of the times when you engage them, the community will give you so many things, so many issues, so many problems to be solved. Now, when it comes to the point whereby now you're prioritizing, just to build on what Karen said, now you're prioritizing the huge issue is that you only focus on the issues based on the budget which is available. So it's like you end up having so many issues which you have identified, then working around on the small things which you need to prioritize just because of the funding limits. So but where there's room for funding, I think with this approach, you can have different projects working around in different angles. But I think for us in Malawi, the focus has been the children. So you understand that children, it needs to grow in an environment with so many sectors around that child. So there's an health effects, health needs, social needs, so many things happening. So, but by the end of the day, we see that because it cannot fit, it cannot cover everything. We are now limited to small things for us to prioritize and work around. So I think let me my colleagues also add on that.
Thank you, Charles. I think you raised some really good points around time and the need to prioritize the different issues. And on that note, there's a question in the chat around how there is sometimes aspects of conflict of interest among different community members. And so what are some of the strategies you have used to ensure that the interventions actually align to the key needs of the community? Thinking about the different power dynamics and the conflicts that do happen, even in communities are not homogenous. There are different people playing different roles, different people having different interests. I wonder if any of our community-based practitioners could speak to that. How do you manage some of those conflicts or disagreements at the community level? Maybe I could invite Gideon, Charles, or Margaret to share thoughts on, how do you make sure that the interventions respond to the needs, because different community members may have different interests. Margaret, you're on mute. I see you're talking.
Can I come in?
Oh, okay, sure. Maybe Margaret, you can go first, and then Gideon can come in. Thank you. Sorry, both of you.
It is true. In the community that we work with, there are so many different ideas from the communities. You find that the other community is thinking the other way and the other community thinking the other way. But the most important thing is when you start having meetings, sensitization meeting, whereby you give them time to come up with their issues affecting them and the root causes. Thereafter, they come up with solutions. Once they start prioritizing, then you know what they want. And the other way around, you find that some other communities are very difficult to change. Why? It is because maybe some other donors, those who come with the charity philanthropic funders, they always go and give them some monies before they do anything. Now, when you go that side, it becomes very difficult and it takes time for them to change. But for now, wherever we have been going, when you talk to them to convince, you sit down, you dialogue with them. Once they understand, they change their mindset to suit the environment that we want to work with them.
Thank you, Margaret. Gideon, do you want to come in?
Oh, yes, Sadaf. Mine would be, in every society, there must be gatekeepers. And these people can surely influence the decisions that the much or less literate community members wish. You hear me, please?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Now, I'm saying, because of these gatekeepers, when we get to the community, we are not operating in isolation. This community has been there. Other donors and other organizations have been there. There is either a county or the national government, and the government officers are always there. We can come in and go out anytime. But again, there are reports, documents about the same communities that have been done over and over. If we try to triangulate and involve every other stakeholder within the community, in one way or the other, we will always get a common or a particular issue to address. Because in as much as these gatekeepers would want to either skew the process for political reasons or for other unknown reasons, somehow we will always get to the right issue to address. Thank you.
Can I come in, Sadaf?
Thank you. Of course, please do.
Yeah, so I think that issue can also be addressed. I think for our catchment area, we have been using issues of representation, make sure that in each and every sector of a community, it has a representation. This can be traditional leaders, mothers, parents, caregivers, even minority groups. So when you bring these people together and you have issues, then you want to prioritize. You can use so many processes to make sure that in each and everyone's voice is heard, and that each and every issue is scrutinized by all the stakeholders, and then there is an agreed action plan. So when you do that, because when we are doing our intervention, we also had a meeting, we called it validation meeting, so that all the issues which were found, we brought them together to say, this is what you provided us during all the community discussions that we had. Then they were saying, yeah, these are the points. Then we come up to the point whereby we're able to prioritize and work on an action plan, which was agreed. So during that action plan, we were able to prioritize the issues. People were able to vote, express concern. They said this is much important than this one. So it was a debate open for everyone. So there was a representation by all the stakeholders from all the community members. In this way, we're able to curtail issues of diversity, and also maybe having other people represented and having an agreed vision of a community to be implemented by all stakeholders taking different laws. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what's striking me about all of your comments is that this takes time and relationship building and relationship nurturing. And I think that one of the challenges that has come up is oftentimes funders maybe don't value that as much as the more tangible results, right? The tangible, you got children into the early childhood center. Those are very easy to see results, but these are actually some of the more powerful results that are important for the long-term systems change work, which is around aligning stakeholders around the needs of children, or taking the time to build consensus around what the priority issues are, or how those issues are going to be addressed, and who's going to do what. All of that takes time and a lot of work, a lot of social interaction and trust building and engagement. So thank you for sharing that. I think we probably have time for 2 more questions. I think there's a really good one that came up in the Q&A, and I know that there's been an answer in the Q&A, but I still want to share it. The question is around, okay, we support communities owning the process, driving the process, but this takes time and this takes work. And most funders usually schedule funding on specific durations, like 2 to 3 years, and have specific outcomes that they are looking for. How do we align that with a community-driven process? When you're coming in with most funders having 2 to 3 year timelines and specific outcomes that they want to see, and knowing that a community-led process takes more time than that, and it actually requires much more flexibility. How do we align the two? And I don't know if any of our CBO partners have thoughts, or maybe Caroline or Manisa, from the seats that you sit at, if you have thoughts on what we might need to do.
I can come in.
Sure, Charles, and then I'll turn to Manisa.
Yeah, so I think what is key is the starting point, the learning and planning phase. We need to plan. You stay for 2 years, and you have indicators. Now you need to work with the community. Let's say, because if you don't prepare the community that you're going to exit after 2 years, then you're going to leave everything hanging. So I think what is key is maybe in the starting point, you need to say, this we have funding, but it's for 2 years. We want to do a community-driven system approach. Let's sit down, because the community-driven system approach is about flexibility, sitting down, discussing with stakeholders and seeing what issues can we solve within the 2 years. So you cannot have a 2 years funding, then want to solve issues to do with 10 years. You need to also have prioritize issues to do with 2 years. So it's okay, it can be done in even 1 year, but what it is the planning and learning phase. You need to engage the community, find issues which can be solved within the first and second year, so that you're able to have outcomes within the second year, which you'll be phasing out. And you also need to prepare the community that by this end of the period, we are exiting, and this is what we want to do for you to have to leave the community in a way that nothing is hanging, but the community has owned the interventions. Thank you.
Charles. Manisa, please come in.
I have to say, I think Charles was being very generous there, because I think this is a really important pushback. I can't think of any development issue, including early childhood, that you can solve or you can make great progress within the time frame that most of our strategies as funders are set against. So our strategy, I can just speak from my perspective, is a 5-year strategy. It tends to be a rolling strategy, so you see yourself moving and not much necessarily changes, but we are really hamstrung by this time frame, and we have rules around how long we can grant to based on current strategies, but it's a real impediment. So I think one of the responses is, as Charles has said, where we have to be really reasonable as funders, and I think our partners have to be very honest with us too about what can be achieved in the limited time frame we have decided to set ourselves in terms of how we can grant make. So one part is, like Charles said, just being very open about what can be achieved in 2 years. In 2 years, we might just about get the community to trust us. Then I think us as funders have to be also open to say, okay, we can't make an exact commitment to follow-on funding, but it is really our intention that this is the start of a process. So using words like this is a planning phase, a planning grant, a scoping phase, hopefully also sets that. But much more importantly than that, I think we have to push back on these timeframes. And part of that is an internal discussion and education we have to take on, I have to take on in how I discuss and plan things with our board. We have to bring people along to understand these shorter time frames, these non-general specific general operating grants. They really hamstring communities. In fact, they're going against what we're saying about localization, community leadership, etc. Let us be very open about our contradictions as funders. And I think it's about constant pushback that we have to receive from our partners. But I also want you assured that there are many of us within the foundation space totally aligned with you and trying to have this internal advocacy and discussion to change those timeframes. But in the meantime, I think Charles's response about being very, very upfront and honest about what can be achieved within the limited time frame you're given is a really good way to start.
Thank you both. I think the last question I'll bring in that has come in different ways from the different questions in the registration form as well as in the chat and in the Q&A is around sustainability. And what are some of the strategies that you all have put in place? And maybe I'll turn to Gideon, Margaret, and Charles. how are you ensuring that this community engagement and ownership is sustained over the long term, even beyond the project funding cycle? What are some of the mechanisms or strategies you've been using from now to promote the likelihood of sustainability, either of the actual intervention or at least of the impact, some of the changes that you're seeing? How are you working towards sustainability? And I'd love for each of you to come in before we wrap up. I don't know, Margaret, do you want to go first?
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go, Gideon, why don't you go first while Margaret is getting her audio? Gideon, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about how the strategies you've put in place for sustainability.
Yeah, one is from the onset of every other initiative, they have to be part of it. It should be coming from them. And for instance, if it's an initiative that is going to run for a long time, we have the government structures that will always be on the ground. So those the systems and the government structures in place, they're supposed to be part of the leadership or part of this transition process, so that they will be able to provide the technical know-how, the guidance, just in case the community needs them along the way. The other thing could be the community at some point takes stock of their alumni, the people who have gone through projects funded by either us or other NGOs. And these people are always asked to support community initiatives going forward. So they provide voluntary inputs, voluntary technical know-how. So as long as the community is there, their children or the alumni that have gone through the same community institutions or structures will always come back to them to support them. In so doing, we believe, yes.
Thank you. I hear you spoke about the inclusion of government systems and structures, as well as the building, really drawing on capacity from within the community, including the children who've been through the program. Margaret, is there anything else you would want to add in around mechanisms for sustainability?
From the same question you asked, for transition, the communities, all the communities, since we started with them, we told them, for example, when we started, we told them that within 2 years we are going to finish, because we never told them that we are going to extend our projects. When we started the projects, for example, like learning how to prepare nutritious food, the same communities, they were coming to learn. They were learning. Thereafter now, themselves now they can cook, they can prepare on their own. So that means even if we stop going there, they'll be teaching other community members. Yes. When we talk about outdoor play area, they catch poles, they were constructing the outdoor play area play. The same community, even if we are there, we are not there, they'll be doing the same. They will be constructing, they'll be going into the forest, they cut the trees, they bring, and they make the outdoor play areas there. And the other thing is, we have to, on their own now, they are going to be asking for teachers. For example, the way they wrote a letter after being sensitized that they have the right to ask for a teacher. If they see that in their area there is no ECE teacher, they will write or they will go to the Office of the Education to ask for the teacher, for the ECE teacher, for the ECE class, for the children. So I'm sure we have prepared the ground. They are ready to do what? To do on their own. So the projects, we are seeing that they are sustainable.
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate how you shared the perspective of in it. Yes. I was saying, just in addition to building capacity, the community members actually being able to advocate with government for some resources and changes. Charles, yes, please, and then we will wrap up the webinar at that point. Please, Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what also key is that we need to leverage local knowledge, what is already existing and is already working. I think using that, you're going to be able to sustain some of this intervention, because it might not be like we are bringing something new, which they are trying to practice just to impress us. But if you promote local knowledge, local practices, local activities, which they have been doing it previously, in that way, these things are going to stay there because it's from them. So they'll be able to sustain that. And also another thing which I want to add is that we also need to strengthen the community systems, like if there are committees to do with child protection, to do with health, to do with whatever it is. We must, at this point in time, use these committees to impact some knowledge and make sure that we are trying to strengthen and prepare them to actually try to transition or to be able to work even without our support. Another thing which I want to add is about ensuring that our activities, we are doing activities which you can try to graduate these activities. Like, you're not doing every activity every year, every month. No, you can do activities this year, in another year, we can phase out these activities so that maybe from these activities, we can now be able to see that these activities are not sustaining on its own. So it's a matter of having a cut-off point whereby each activity should come to an end, or should phase out or transition or graduate, so that they'll be able to sustain the results coming out of these activities without even a long-term process. Thank you.
Thank you. These are really wonderful comments, and I would encourage attendees to follow up when we send out the webinar. We'll send out some additional resources. I think all of the strategies you shared are so in line with an idea of long-term systems change work that is really driven by the community and held with local community and government systems. I know that we are past our time, so I want to thank each and every one of our panelists, as well as our attendees, for really engaging fully, for sharing really thoughtful questions, both in advance and during the webinar, and for being with us here on this, in this important conversation. And I think Amina would agree with me that this conversation is not ending here. We're hoping to continue this. We know that there is increasing commitment from all of us here in the sector to community-led approaches, and we need more spaces where we can share some of the best practices, the lessons learned, and how we can mobilize as a sector to support it more fully. Amina, I'll turn to you for closing remarks.
Very briefly, thanks Sadaf and the team that organized this, and many thanks to the panelists for sharing your knowledge, and for the participants. I'm very excited about this, webinar, because many a times we have webinars where we have experts. So I'm really happy that we do have community experts. We have given them a voice, and I do hope that we'll get an opportunity to really continue engaging with people who are on the ground and getting the work done. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you.